let me show you how I built my own 12 frame honey extractor. So I did a fair bit of research into what I wanted to build, watching a lot of YouTube videos and scouring the internet to see other DIY builds, and I found a lot of them were not as big as what I wanted. I wanted something that would hold at least 8 frames, and then a lot of the ones I was actually looking at would only hold about 4 full depth frames, and so they just weren't big enough. I also wanted something a bit more rigid as well, rather than using a plastic drum or a bin, or using rims from bicycle wheels. I wanted a little bit more of a sturdier build, so this is what I came up with, and I'm just going to walk you through it now quite quickly. For a full breakdown on the build and the actual steps I took, you can go through and watch one of my other videos in my YouTube channel. So firstly, I started off with a drum. So the drum I picked up for $30 from a scrapyard. I had to look fairly hard, but this is what I managed to pick up, which was absolutely perfect for what I needed. Originally I was thinking I would get 8 frames into this extractor, but in the end I've actually managed to get 12 frames. Total cost of the build came in under 300 Australian dollars, which is really good. Tank was $30. The motor up here has been removed from a treadmill, so that was free because the treadmill was no longer working, so I managed to salvage the motor off that. And they're a really good motor to use because they maintain high torque all the way through the rev range, so even at low revs it still pulls really well. I've attached stainless steel legs to it. One of the main things I use for attaching parts, such as the legs and also up here and over here, are rivet nuts. They worked out really well and just really make a good place for fixing down bolts on the extractor. So the diameter of the drum is 670 millimeters, and that allowed me to get 12 frames in, which was great. The height of it is about 800 millimeters high. Now, my original plan was I wanted to be able to get a 20-litre drum underneath for filling up with honey, but because of the height of this main tank, I can only manage to get a 10-litre bucket underneath for honey. So in hindsight, what I would have been better doing was cutting this down maybe by 100 millimeters. Okay, I would have had a little bit less. So underneath I've got about 200 millimeters of height here for holding honey. But what it would have meant is I would have been able to get a 20-litre bucket there instead of a 10, without the overall project being too tall. So inside cage was made out of stainless steel. Okay, and I put little brackets up here to hold the frames. Just sits in like that. Little D down the bottom, and then also a second little bracket down there just to support the frames as well. Okay, up here I've used 2 flange bearings. So one up top, one down the bottom, and the motor I've just held on with 3 grub screws. So there's a keyway in the shaft of the motor, and those 3 grub screws are threaded into the stainless steel axle, and then just sit in the keyway like so. 5mm acrylic for the lid, and a little rare earth magnet here as well, just to hold that lid in place like so. So with wiring up, I've got a video that I've done on how to wire this up for a DC motor. Basically you just use a couple of parts off eBay, an AC speed controller, and then a bridge rectifier as well to change it from an AC to a DC. But if you want more information on that, you can go through and watch my other videos. Okay, so we can just turn it on. And see it's starting to wind up. Now this is spinning at very low RPM at the moment. It can go much faster. I went with direct drive but in hindsight I probably would have been better off having a pulley system where I could have used gear reduction. That would have given me a greater range in the lower RPM. I'm finding that, you know, using the potentiometer here to change my speed, it doesn't take very much of a turn of the potentiometer to increase the speed significantly. Now with a motor that runs at 4,000 RPM, I really only need a range of 0 to 400 RPM. So if I was to build it again, I'd probably put the motor down the side of the drum and have a pulley system through the shaft. Overall, very happy with the build. For under $300 I've managed to build a 12 frame honey extractor, and one that I can continue working on. So if anything breaks, I know I can fix it myself and replace parts as I need to. I hope you found this YouTube video helpful. Don't forget to check out my full build video where I go through in detail how I fabricated each part of the project. And then also don't forget to check out the wiring video as well, on how to wire up a treadmill motor for any application where you need a variable speed.